Hi everyone, and welcome back to another one. Today, as you saw in the title, we have a special one. Today we go back in time. Stay with us for a selection of 10 amazing moments we had on the podcast.
So normally there is a saying that says garbage in, garbage out. Like if you are not getting the right data, like you will not get probably the best results. My first tip is making sure that you spend time really reviewing and getting your data double triple check to make sure it will help produce the best possible outcome. But to give the word to you, so which tip and trick would you recommend?
Well, that's a great one, right? And if I can switch metaphors here, right? Forecasting is the foundation of the house, right? But a proper forecast, getting the right answer is like tending to a garden. We can't just throw some seeds on the ground and hope that they grow, right? We have to take all the necessary steps. We have to till the earth, we have to prepare it, we have to then plant, we have to make sure we use the right organic fertilizer, we have to weed the garden, we have to pluck all the little things that are going to invade our forecast and cause things to go awry. Then once the forecast starts to grow, we have to make sure we apply the appropriate organic pesticides, right? We have to make sure that to get the crop that we want, we have to really tend to it. And I can tell you, in my past experience, literally every single time a customer or someone who has approached me somewhere and says, I'm having trouble with my forecast accuracy, I can almost always guarantee you that that person's not quite doing all of the steps that are necessary to validate their incoming data. And validating the incoming data can mean simply, making sure your ACD integration is pulling across the right information, right? If we don't get that right, nothing matters at that point. But if the information on the integration is coming in appropriately, then are we making sure we smooth out those anomalies, right? Are we asking the question, is what happened yesterday what was supposed to happen? And if it didn't, why? What really digging into the reasoning behind things like that. And that historical data, that's the lifeblood of our forecast. Now, there are scenarios where people do not get the necessary proper validation that they can get because their volumes are so volatile. But in most cases, if someone says to me, I'm not getting the accuracy I need, I can almost guarantee you that that person's not putting in the pre-work to the forecast and validating that information beforehand. So you have to go and you have to remove those special events. You have to make sure that those anomalies are smoothed out. You have to make sure that not just in volume, but in handle time and after call work, or if we're talking about, some of the different channels, making sure your concurrency numbers are set up correctly in chat, right? It's all of those different things. And sometimes it's about just going through a simple checklist, but forecast accuracy, it's a result of the work we put in. It's not a result of the tool that you're using. It's not a result of any kind of AI or machine learning magic. It's literally about, are you going and are you pulling those weeds? Are you spraying the pesticides? Are you taking care of your garden on a daily basis? And if the answer to that question is yes, forecast accuracy almost always goes up. Right. It's a fun analogy that can really, really help demonstrate what we do and why we do it. Because at the end of the day, that forecast, when you hit that 98, 99% accuracy regularly, that's like getting a big, juicy, beautiful tomato that just everybody goes, wow, this guy has a green thumb and really knows what they're doing. And that is the big, juicy tomato of our industry, is a 99% forecast accuracy.
What top 3 strategies or tips for workforce management would you have? And out of those strategies or tips, what would be your number one takeaway for the audience today?
I think the number one would definitely be, an open, honest, and direct communication with your network. So it could be in-house, could be outsourced. I think now any large-scale operation will have nearly anywhere between 60 to 80% business outsource. And this is where having a open, honest, and direct communication with your partner teams can really make or break it. That's number one. Number two, WFM team, as we just discussed, should more come across as a partner than as police. So create that feeling of partnership with the vendor network or with the usual network, where the teams, the frontline teams that are delivering, they should have a sense of trust with WFM, and they should understand, look, they're here for my betterment. And this is something that could be used as a philosophy or strategy, however you want to take it. That would be number 2. And number 3, I think numbers are not always what they seem. So don't forget the human element when you're scheduling and planning. There'll always be deviations. Take those deviations, with a pinch of salt, and try to work around that. I think these 3 things I would say should be, the strategy to work. And what's the top one? I think the top one would be, as I said, number 1 for me, having an open, honest, and direct communication with the network. They should know what you're planning, and on the other hand, you should also know what they are planning, what they know. Every information should flow seamlessly between the 2 points, and that I have seen always working. Then this will make sure you avoid surprises. And the worst thing that can happen in WFM planning is surprises. Just screws everything up. And maybe just to add to that one, to give an example. And again, this in communication also goes, don't assume that partners know. We had a situation where once we, onboarded a new partner, and having all this communication about, planning how many FTEs we need. And so WFM was, very open about, hey, these many FTEs we need to plan. We went to production, and suddenly we realized that actually we don't have enough hours that we needed. What happened? Everybody assumed that a definition of FTE for us is 8 hours. And the other side, we thought other side thinks also 8 hours. For them, it was 7.5. And who's wrong, who's right? That's not the question. The question is the communication was not clear. It was assumed. And then, the project was in a bit of a thick soup. So I think everything should be super clear in terms of communications, no assumptions made. And then I think it would definitely, the plans then wouldn't fail.
Do you have any part of WFM that is more like than the others?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, I mean, I've obviously, in my current role and in the roles that I've performed, I have the luxury of playing with lots of different types of tools and different types of technology, and also working with large customers and small customers and everything in between. So I get to see WFM in all of its different guises. For me, one of the things about WFM that I really like is the way that WFM systems can be used to support flexible working, to help agents maintain a really good work-home balance. So I like the ways that the tools increasingly can help improve agent autonomy. So they allow users to do things like shift swaps and express their working preferences, but also create more opportunities for agents to be self-sufficient, to be able to drive their own decisions and to make their own requests without having to rely on supervisors and team leaders. So they basically have much more control over what they do. Now, traditionally, many of the companies that I've worked for, particularly when I first started out in this industry, tended to be really tentative with automation, particularly when it came to things like time off request and request management in general. So they would want to control very closely the process of approvals, the process of withdrawals and escalations of requests, very reluctant to try and hand over that to some form of AI or to automate it in any way. So what I'm seeing as I start to work with more companies and as I move through is that increasingly now they are beginning to kind of take those tentative steps into automation. And now they're looking at ways in which they can add more and more to the process. Often it starts with time off, but it now extends into other things like requesting training and other things as well. But really, it's looking at ways in which they can get quick wins by doing relatively simple things like putting in approvals processes that allow agents to get everything approved automatically without the need to involve a supervisor. But now increasingly, it's not about just, okay, you've got time off, therefore you can make a request. But now what we're beginning to kind of move into is actually the kind of concept that now people can make requests, and the tools that we're using are now so sophisticated that they can start to actually apply the kind of logic that we would use or look for supervisor or managers to impart on that decision making. So they can actually consider requests, not just on the basis of, have you got time in the pool, but actually, will that request give your business a net improvement? Will it actually give you some genuine benefits? And they can actually make decisions which you would normally think about a human sitting there making. And it's these types of smart rules that are coming in that I think are beginning to really change that game. So really, the idea of being able to now do a lot more with the automation and to make it more autonomous, I think we're really beginning to see some really exciting things coming along. And now we can create much more flexibility in the whole decision-making process and start to drive improvements throughout with some really, starting some really simple processes, but we can get some really big results quite quickly.
If you look at the beginning of your career, what would be the one thing you wish you had known before or on the beginning of your career that you can now share as advice to our listeners?
If I knew early on back then that I need to work on my communication, it would have been a much easier process for me. It's really that stakeholder management part. If you get to learn that early on in your career, then it would really help open a lot of doors for you. But, in order for you to have the opportunity to practice it, you need to be at a certain level of skills as well, because some stakeholders, they only trust certain people. And like, I understand how difficult it would be for someone who's like an RTA to necessarily have the opportunity to learn those skills. But being learning everything that's required for you to perform your duties. Basically, you would get noticed by your stakeholders that you're a person that they can trust in terms of this side of the business. So I guess learning, knowing that from, if I knew that I needed to learn that quickly before, I would have, it would have accelerated my career.
Fast track your process.
Yes, that's right. Right. And I always go by the motto that I learned from one of my previous leaders as well is, fail fast. Don't be afraid to fail. Failing is a part of your learning experience. So failing fast would allow you to recover faster. Right. So it's not that I'm not saying that you make those big mistakes, but it's given that you would make mistakes. You don't take it too hard. Mistakes are part of life. The most important thing is that you learn from those mistakes and you don't repeat those mistakes, right? That's how I learned. That's how I was taught to look at it early on. So having that mindset really helped me, like, not afraid of making mistakes, but more of, I've made a lot of mistakes. So at this point in my career, I already know what to avoid. And I think to help the next generation really move forward is that you do need to spend some of your personal time, maybe 1 or 2 hours per week, to read about something new in not just in workforce management, but in the industry overall. Like I myself spend 3 hours every weekend going through the data manager course that I'm going through for the past 6 months now. And it's been a game changer, really. So if I am at this point in my career still learning new things in my field, the more important it is for those that are just starting off their workforce management career to, really spend more time in basically improving themselves, improving their skill set. So those are the advice that I could give the younger generation, I guess, to focus on your personal development, and also don't be afraid to make those mistakes. It's really part of life.
Do you have anything that you could share about best practices that are creating that culture of continuous improvement, kind of self-development, especially on the contact center planning?
Yeah, there's a few things I'd like to share there, Andre. The first thing I want to say, though, is I don't really want to be overcritical of planners, because it's a tough job.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, lots of moving parts, lots of competing stakeholders that you've got to keep happy. So I wouldn't want to be critical people in the planning function. But, there are a few sort of recurring themes that we see, things that maybe could be done better or differently. The one thing that sticks out to me is, we're all excited. You and I, I'm sure, Andre, are quite interested in forecasting and the way to forecast different channels over different time periods and the ways that we're deploying artificial intelligence, things like that, to make the forecasting easier and more accurate. Forecasting is great, but I'm going to say something controversial, and that is that by itself, a forecast has no value. It's what you do with the forecast that matters. So I'd actually say where the magic happens, most of the magic happens with workforce management and planning, is in the scheduling of people to cover the different types of work, the different channels. And one, I won't call it a mistake, but one sort of pattern of behavior we often see is companies start up using workforce management software and they reproduce the shift patterns that they've had for ages. And they're not using the capability of the system to optimize the supply of staff around that variable demand. Obviously, reproducing the shifts you had before is the path of least resistance. It's maybe not a bad idea in the short term, but if you stay on the old shift patterns, you're leaving most of the benefits of the planning process on the table.
What are things that you believe that are myths about workforce management that over the years you have been trying to debunk and try to get things straight?
Yeah, I think one that sticks out is that, we're talking about real-time management and intraday management, and it's seen quite often as a sort of reactive discipline. We've got a problem, the service level's going right down and there's a massive queue building up and it's sort of panic mode, panic stations. Let's change agent skills on the fly. Let's cancel training and one-to-ones. And actually we did a great webinar about real-time management a year or so ago with Todd Gladden of PlanMen and Rebecca Waterson of Specsavers. And basically good real-time management isn't panic mode. It isn't being completely reactive. It's about having what Todd calls a plan to react. So, a well-run contact center will run sort of war games to create and refine that plan to react. An escalating list of actions that are triggered in a set order, and it's all pre-planned. So you're not panicking, you're doing something that has been planned. So again, to fail to plan is to plan to fail, even in real-time management.
I think certainly I've seen a big shift in terms of the types of people that are coming into workforce management careers or people that are excelling compared with where you were sort of 2 decades ago. When you search for a great workforce manager, what skills do you look for the most valuable today? And have you seen that change over the last 2 decades as I have?
It's a great question. There's definitely a shift. And I suppose if we sort of talk a little bit first around maybe the soft skills, which I've always been a fan of. I think throughout my career in recruitment, whether it's planning or, project managers or medical professionals before that, I think the most engaging candidates that I've loved working with have always had a consistent thread of they're bright. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're academically bright. They're not bright, but they're sharp. They're curious, intellectually curious, practically curious. They like to understand what they do and take it to the next level. I think a real sort of hiring trait people would be really well served to follow is find those people that have got empathy, that have a degree of emotional intelligence where they may not know a technical or a numerical answer to everything, but actually they can communicate what they don't know and they can build that trust, which I think is vital in all walks of life and relationships, whether they're professional or personal, to get the job done and to solve problems. So I think customers and employees have definitely had a mind shift that they want to be in a place of work that is genuinely flexible, which would be a client saying, we have a flexible work policy, but it really wasn't. And there was nothing documented and it was very piecemeal, and it would be, you're having a fridge delivered Friday morning. So look, why don't you work from home? but we want to see you here in the afternoon. So I think the expectation now is we all know globally working from home works. And in many instances, and it's well documented, there's been an increase in productivity and there's been a lowering of sickness, because you know what, you might wake up and you don't feel particularly great. It's a different scenario to walk up a flight of stairs into your home office as it is to get up, get in your car, drive to the station, jump on a packed train, and it's just the thought of it is going to kind of go, you know what, yeah, maybe today is the day I kind of call in sick because I'm just mentally not ready to deal with all of that. So I think, your question was, what do I look for in the skills? I think the soft skills, definitely. As a recruiter, if you're worth your salt, you can find the skills. I think trying to find a strong cultural or personality alignment with a candidate to an organization is probably the magic dust, really.
What are your thoughts on how workforce management can improve its outcomes by adding financial impacts or financial planning and analysis? What knowledge do you think workforce management professionals can take from the finance world?
So I actually think, at least here in North America, workforce management is very much in line with finance, right? Because usually, if you look at just where we sit in operations today, right, commonly, broadly speaking, you have executive teams and the leadership set their goals, right? The sort of high level direction of where we need to go. Then usually finance then breaks that down into, what are the numbers or what does that look like operationally to make it work? And then they pass it on to workforce management and to sort of, hey, go make that happen, right? That's kind of how it works today. And I think workforce management has a good understanding of those results because we're held to account a lot for finances numbers, right? Whether they're correct or wrong, because they're never perfect. But I think it's a really important question you bring about what can we learn from finance as workforce management. So if I step back, right, if you think of finance has a pipeline of talent. Now I'm talking not within the organization, but within the knowledge domain. So finance has a pipeline of talent from your undergrad, right? The moment you graduate from university, there is a path for you. So you learn a financial degree or a degree in finance. There are financial professional organizations you can join. And then once you've gotten your accreditation, you have entry-level finance jobs, right? So you can be a financial analyst or whatever kind of sort of entry-level role. You have a manager role, you have a senior manager in finance, right up to a CFO. So there is a track, right? And we don't have that in workforce management. Everyone that I know in workforce management just stumbled into it.
Yep.
No one went to school for it.
No.
And so few are fortunate to have it as a career. So few, because a lot of us just, might fall into it. It's a couple of years here and there. And if they can't make anything useful out of it, they drop out. They go into something else, customer service, other analyst type of roles, because there isn't that track for them to grow. So we are stunting our own growth as a knowledge domain within workforce management because we don't have that, that track to guide talent from university or even from college right into the workplace and, and up the career ladder, if you will. So that's the biggest thing we could learn from finance.
Do you think that the expansion, in order to improve this maturity, how much is it related with technology and how much is it related eventually with actually the development of the professionals and the function itself?
Well, I think it's both. Every new solution needs to be accepted, and you need people who believe in new technology and want to adapt it. So that is in every change that plays a major role. On the other hand, I think, of course, you need good professionals and you need good tooling. But I don't think that tooling will replace professionals. It's like they cooperate. It's a tool that makes the skill set of the professional stronger. But I do think to a large extent, a lot of the knowledge that is still required and a lot of the work that is done in Excel by planners can be replaced by smart tooling. And that means that the planners can focus on other things. I mean, a forecaster spending days and days manipulating Excel sheets should actually talk to people and try to talk to the marketing and make sure he or she has all the information about campaigns, and then spend way less time on some appropriate forecasting tool.
Yeah, and there is a lot of cleaning up reconciliation, then mismatch of information back and forward.
Exactly, and there are so many errors made and people reinventing the wheel. That's not necessary.
How much do you think that the role, specifically on workforce management, of the WFM professional has evolved in the last few years?
I think massively, because when workforce management was first introduced, and I'm showing my age here, fine, we had it initially on an Excel spreadsheet. That was the start of workforce management. Who comes in when? And in a multilingual environment, what was really important was that we had always bilingual people on the various shifts, because otherwise our service that we provided to Swiss, German, Dutch, French customers, it fell over. They couldn't be served because those folks didn't speak English or didn't want to speak English. So it was important that we had the right people at the right time. This is how it started off. Then we started to look at what do people do? When are we busy? When do we need more people? It evolved really gradually into this massively complex building, whereby a good workforce manager and a good workforce management team points out when there is availability for training to happen, where we have got slots allocated for one-on-one and coaching sessions. That wasn't the case over 20 years ago. It was just, here is your day, do what you want. And you were wondering why you had calls in queue, why you had lost call percentages over lunch, because nobody realized, oh dear, it's 12 o'clock. So let's say 12 o'clock in Switzerland, which was 11 o'clock Irish time. But Swiss people just put the phone down, went to lunch.
Yeah.
At 11 o'clock. I was like, oh, what happened here? So I think the value out of a good tooling and then the interaction, there was a time when workforce management kind of sat on the outer periphery of a team. Now you're very much part of the team. In the weekly team meetings, you are present, you are presenting the numbers. How many absences did we have? When were these people sick? What was the impact on the service delivery? That's the value add your teams as a support function bring to the in-house team, but even greater so to the customer we serve. Just imagine if the calls are not answered. It's not just the one customer on the phone that's frustrated because he's in the queue. It's the family around that customer who sees that maybe the mother sits on the phone for 20 minutes trying to return a dress and she can't, and she gets off the phone and should have cooked dinner and the dinner isn't ready and the children come back from school. So if you don't provide a good service, you are not frustrating one person on the other end, you are frustrating a family. The children then go to school and they are stressed because it was a hassle at home, so you impact the class. We need to think bigger who we serve. It's not just that one person.
What would be the one thing you fix in the WFM industry?
Yeah, so all anxiety about the future aside, and what that means for the growth of workforce management, I would say I would probably focus on bringing in the next generation of professionals, because I think there's not enough, exposure to all the different opportunities within just the call center industry as a whole, contact center industry, whatever you want to call it. Workforce management is just one of those areas of opportunity for people to grow in. I think the call center industry is great. You know, in terms of, I've seen a lot of the Gen Z questions about like, where can I find a job? I go on Reddit a lot and read these career posts and stuff. And there's a lot of questions from younger folks just coming out of school, and they're coming into right now what seems like a recession with all these layoffs happening, and people are having a hard time finding these jobs. Is, you know, exposing people to the call center industry as a career opportunity. There's a career path here. It's, you know, you can, sure, you start on the ground floor in a lot of situations, but I don't know of many other industries where you can come in without a college degree and work your way up to an executive position. You know, I personally know several people who are like that, who don't have college degrees, who worked their way up through the call center industry and are now, you know, making very handsome salaries for themselves and their families, which isn't everything. They've also got their work-life balance, and some of them are starting their own companies and that stuff too. So I think just exposing people to workforce management and call centers as a career opportunity would be one thing. And then I think the other would be just awareness within the company of what workforce management does, just making other teams aware and seeing how workforce management can help. You know, we're kind of like internal consultants in a lot of ways. And we mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, resource optimizations. We're not just there in workforce management. There's so much more that we can help with. And I think as this technology and everything continues to evolve, I think workforce management will also continue to evolve, and we'll find more ways to make the companies more efficient.